Hello, and welcome to this episode of Blockchain Bylines. My name is Nick Carey, the co-founder and vice chairman of blockchain.com. Today, I'm joined by Kyle Reidhead, the co-owner and head of research at Milk Road. In this episode, we're diving into crypto media, getting the pulse on crypto Twitter and what it's like bridging conversations between investors and the teams that are actually building the next wave of products. So, Kyle, I'm really excited to spend some time with you today. I know you were basically jacked into a whole bunch of conversations that are happening online 24/7, 365. And I think one of the things that's intimidating and challenging about learning about crypto is sort of where to start, how do you get good access to information, and how do you sort of filter signal and noise. So we'll cover a lot of those things today. But first off, Milk Road, what is it? Why did you call it that? Give us a little bit of a background on that.
Yeah, so Milk Road is essentially an easy to understand or simple way of trying to navigate the crypto market as an investor. So when crypto had its success back in 2017 and even early 2020, a lot of the media out there was very, very technical, really nerdy stuff, hard to understand, right? Going deep into like what is a blockchain and what is a, whatever. And it was hard for a lot of the average people out there to really like understand and dig their teeth into. So Milk Road was created to basically like the average investor, the retail investor, you're just typical tech person. A lot of our audience is like American and, works in Silicon Valley who likes crypto, likes the idea of it, but this isn't their 100% passion that this is all they do and think about. And so it was like, hey, can we tell good stories about crypto, help people wrap their heads around what this technology is, but in a very simple and relatable way. The idea was like, when you're at the water cooler or sitting at a bar, chatting with a buddy, can you talk about crypto? You're probably not going to go super, super deep into the technical components, but you might stay more high level and explain things in a more simple, relatable way. That's exactly what Milk Road was. We've kind of expanded that now. So we started as just a newsletter. Now we have podcasts specifically in crypto, but also now in the macro world and also in the AI world. Reason is we think macro really matters for crypto and for investing in general. And we think AI now really matters for crypto and investing in general because these are the kind of secular trends that are sort of changing the world and changing the landscape, which is, on the macro side, it's the debasement of fiat currency. On the crypto side, it's bringing the financial system on chain. And on the AI side, it's integrating the entire world and business with, a new form of consciousness, a new form of, way of thinking, et cetera. So those three big trends are what we're tracking at Milk Road now. So we've kind of expanded it outside of just crypto. But yeah, that's that. And then the reason is why Milk Road, it's kind of a playoff of the Silk Road, which was kind of, for those that weren't here back in the day, it was like actually the first big use case for Bitcoin, which was an online kind of black market way of selling, I don't know, everything from drugs to whatever. And it kind of was what put Bitcoin on the map for good or bad reasons. And so it's just kind of a play on that.
Cool. So the focuses are crypto, AI, and macro. And I think it's pretty clear that those three things are really shaping a lot of the dialogue today. And, one of the things that's funny about crypto and investing in general is just how intimidating it is. And I forget which comedian said it, but it was like crypto combines everything people don't understand about computers with everything they don't understand about money. And I always kind of love that explanation because it's like, oh God, it's kind of true. So there's a lot of things we need to do to demystify and help educate. And so Milk Road is really sort of a venue to do all those things. You guys also take sort of like a playful tone, I think, sometimes with some of the content. You also have these anthropomorphic milk cartons. Talk to us a little bit about like why you do that and the tone that you guys are trying to strike for your audience and educating investors.
Yeah, I think a big reason we do it and probably a big reason for our success early on was just we wanted to make it lighter. As you just said, it's really freaking hard to understand crypto. It's like very technical. And then also finance for a lot of people is very technical and very hard to understand. And so it was overwhelming for a lot of people. And, especially in 2021, you had so many new people coming in the space who were not necessarily tech people, not necessarily finance people, but they were excited about crypto and this whole new financial system. And so they wanted to get in and try to understand. But if you were on crypto Twitter or CT, you're like, what are these guys saying? Like, what are these words? What are these abbreviations? It just didn't really make sense. If you're reading a lot of the media back then, it was also hard to like come in as like a net new person and try to feel like you were part of this and like you were up to speed. And so Milk Road was like, hey, let's make this simple. Let's make this fun. We do a lot of like kind of cultural references, whether that be about sports or entertainment or whatever, just to make it more of a relatable, enjoyable experience while you're still trying to wrap your head around this confusing world of both finance and tech. And so the milkman thing was just, again, kind of creating a caricature that we now have multiple of them. We have like a Milk Road AI character who's kind of like this like robotic looking thing. We have the main one, which is like the Milk Road crypto one. We even have like a pro version now, which is like a product we have for more like in-depth investor takes, where it's like a pro milkman. And again, this was just to keep it fun, to keep it light, and just try to make it where it's approachable for the average person. So we had a lot of success with that right off the bat because there wasn't many people doing it. There's a little bit more now. You can get kind of easier information on crypto and finance these days. But back in 2021, 2022-ish, it was a challenge. So there's a lot of things to talk about then too. So yeah, that's kind of where this all came from.
So a lot of people like to talk about, crypto cycles where you have these bull markets and bear markets, and then these periods of consolidation or even accumulation by economic actors. And, we're in sort of an interesting market this year. We've had some all-time highs. Right now it's, trading a little bit sideways or down from those. What do you hear from the audience that you're listening to, and how do you sort of decide and think about like the editorial narratives that are important to Milk Road?
Yeah, good question. Our main thing is we really believe that crypto's in this stage of sort of growing up. We're trying to become a real legit industry, creating real legit products and real legit businesses with real legit assets. And I think 2020, 2021, we created a lot of vaporware. And so our main thing is we want to share with our audience what is real, right? So separate the noise, right? And really help the audience just understand, like, what are we really building here? Why are we really building this? What companies are doing a good job here? What even is a good job, right? I think a lot of people don't even quite understand what is a good token, what is a bad token. They just think it's all kind of the same, right? A lot of people, the way that the industry is going now is we're building a lot of centralized products, which a lot of people if they were here from back in the day, think that that's a bad thing. And we're like, listen, it's not necessarily a bad thing. There's a give and take here in this industry. And so we're just trying to help people navigate this space and understand, like, what does adoption actually look like? What do we need? We want everyone to understand the real values and the real growth patterns that are happening, what really matters in this space. And so, we're just trying to really cover that stuff. And so, we listen to our audience a lot. We get a lot of feedback from them. Obviously, these cycles, and especially the last year, have been very difficult for investors and especially retail investors. They don't really understand what the heck's going on and, why are our altcoins not going up? And so we're really just trying to help people navigate that. And a big part of it is a lot of people came into crypto and now they are investors, but they were never investors before crypto, right? They didn't really, this crypto was their first entrance into actually like caring about finances and caring about trying to make money via investing. And so a lot of what we teach as well is just like principles of investing, right? Like things that you
Yeah.
would learn if you went to school for investing, maybe, or if you've been investing for a long time. It's like, hey, the dreams that we have in the crypto world are generally way too crazy, expecting 100Xs, expecting a 10X in a year. That's not normal in finance, right? Like the average for the stock market is like 10%. And yet we're mad if we're only 100% gain in a year. And so a lot of us is now trying to really help our audience understand what it means to be an investor and understand kind of the foundational things so that they can manage their expectations. They can kind of see where this world is going. It's a lot of sobering takes, to be completely honest, because I think in 2021, when a lot of people came into this space, we lived in this cloud of dreams. And so we're trying to bring everyone back to reality and like see this space as to what it is and watch it grow up and become a legitimate sector.
So yeah, you talked about like basically helping financial literacy, which I think is a really important and responsible thing for people in crypto to concentrate on a bit. There's a tendency for especially young people to be, I think, persuaded by these schemes, this PR, these narratives that, things are for sure going to work. And in the vast majority of cases, that is not true. I think it's really good to like teach some fundamentals about the powerful effects of compounding, everything from dollar cost averaging, which is to put small amounts of savings into investments that are risk adjusted over time, which is to say you don't put all your eggs in one basket. And you don't try to outsmart the market. You just do things because you have a long-term time horizon for understanding a potentially secular trend, as you mentioned, like the digitization of finance. And so teaching some of those concepts is really critical because you can kind of actually help people achieve their goals. It's just that it may not happen on a very, very short time frame, which of course people hope for, but the reality that those things happen is kind of rare. So you said you could provide some like sobering takes on things. What's been one like the more surprising or wildest reactions to a Milk Road newsletter or podcast that you've had so far?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think the biggest reactions are always when prices make big movements, especially down, which is happening right now as we speak. And so, anytime we have price action that's getting a bit dicey, the audience tends to really trip out. And this is where we really need to help them kind of understand and think more long term, as you just mentioned. Secular trend. It's very clear to us anyway that the world is moving on chain, right? And so, if the world is going to move on chain, that's not going to happen tomorrow. That's not going to happen in the next week or the next month. But if the world is going to move on chain, it means that there are assets that exist in this space that are going to continue to grow and appreciate over time. And so the biggest thing is just helping our audience kind of zoom out and understand that concept that, hey, this isn't this short-term thing. We're not here for that. We're here for the long term. We're here to really change the financial system, which is going to change so much in this world. And so you've got to kind of zoom out and think bigger. One of our most common sayings is just major spot, zoom out, chill, which is basically just like you don't need to go down the risk curve and buy the craziest altcoins and hope for your 100x. You can just buy the majors in this industry. And if you just zoom out and you just relax and let it all play out, you're probably going to do really well. But whenever, I mean, we had someone on the podcast yesterday, and he gave a very, very bearish case to what's going to happen with markets. And we actually had to put a little bit of a disclaimer at first and say, hey guys, this doesn't necessarily mean this is our view, but we think it's good for you guys to understand the other side of it. We still think we're in a bull market and, we're having this pullback here, and that's fine. That's natural, but don't get too emotional over investments. And I think that's what a lot of the audience does. And so we tend to be very sensitive to that fact and just sort of like help, go back to the education side of things.
Yeah. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on like altcoins and meme coins as sort of an entry point before basically spending, I would say, more intellectual time and rigor on those like majors. So how do you guys think about that? Emotional investing is definitely something that people start off with, and then it kind of needs to head more into like a more rigorous intellectual exercise. So you're kind of removing emotion out of it and thinking a little bit more foundationally.
Yeah. Look, I think any innovation in the crypto space is great. If you think about the way that the culture is these days, people want to speculate on absolutely anything, right? Prediction markets are taking off, sports betting is taking off and has been for years. It's all anyone wants to do is speculate on something. And so, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think that that's a good thing. If you're passionate about something, why not take a bet on it, right? As long as you do it responsibly, which is where I think a lot of people take it too far. And interestingly enough, a lot of our audience is what they call ex-degens. And so they're people that came into crypto and they speculated in meme coins or altcoins and they lost money. And then they found Milk Road and said, okay, it's the grown-up channel where I can actually learn how to manage my money better. I can still put 1% of my portfolio and go mess around in prediction markets or in meme coins or in, new cutting edge tokens. That's fine. But probably I shouldn't do that with 50% or 80%, or in some cases, 100% of my portfolio. So it's kind of understanding how to manage a portfolio is a big thing that I think people need to understand. And then it's, hey, go play around with what's going on. I think it's really good to play around with a lot of this new stuff because it helps you understand the future of where the space is going, right? Not everything in meme coins or NFTs or all these things are going to be successful, but you have no idea unless you go and play around with it, right? So I challenge people a lot. Well, I don't say, hey, go put all your money in this. Go use Pumped Up Fund, right? Go get on Farcaster and play around with some of these like social tokens and things. I think it's all really, really good and really educational, right? So if you want to understand where is the internet going and what's possible, then go play around with that stuff. Just, maybe manage your risk a little bit, manage your portfolio, and don't put everything in there. And try to have that sobering take of like, hey, this thing might be good. But I think the thing that people need to realize about crypto is in the traditional finance world, most people can only invest in a company when it's like $1 billion company, right? Or hundreds of millions when it's gone public. In crypto,
Yeah.
we've sort of changed that, right? You can invest in a company when it doesn't even have a product. It has no revenue, not even a product, right? And that's a whole different world, right? Like people don't understand, like in order to be successful at investing in those kind of companies, you need to invest in like 1,000 of them and you're hoping that like one of them makes it. But people to come into crypto and they go, oh, this thing's really cool. It's pre-product though. pre-revenue, and I'll just put most of my money in that because it's probably going to make it. And it's like, yeah, that's not how business really works. Like 99% of companies fail, and you're investing in a startup with a lot of money. So it's a weird dynamic that I think people need to try to understand. You just got to manage your portfolio properly.
So it's impossible to talk about, I think, the evolving landscape in media without spending a little time talking about Twitter. And we in the industry call it CT or crypto Twitter, which is like maybe a whole sub algorithm within it. But so CT loves a good narrative. As a just sort of curiosity, what's like the dumbest one you've seen actually move markets?
So interesting. I think the dumbest narrative is the revenue meta. Why are we calling that a narrative? Revenue meta, you've probably heard this on crypto Twitter. Everyone's like, oh, the next meta is revenue. Like, let's go invest in companies with revenue. And it's like, look, that is the whole purpose of building a company, is to create profit and revenue. How is that a meta? How is that a narrative? That's just obvious. That's fundamental. So it's not dumb in the sense like, of course, you should go buy companies that are generating revenue, but it's just funny that crypto Twitter had a realization, a moment that, hey, this is the new meta. And it's like, no, 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 no. This is what it's been all along. This is capitalism. This is what it's been for, for forever. So I always laugh at that whole idea of a revenue meta. It's just absolute crazy to me. That's where you should be thinking and what you should be thinking about always, no matter what. And when new narratives come in, which is great, whether the narrative is about, I don't know, social fi or, whatever it is, you should be looking at which things are generating revenue or which things have the potential to generate revenue, right? So this isn't a meta. This is just investing 101, building business 101. So I always laugh at that one.
There's there's a show called Silicon Valley that was like a big joke about basically like
Yeah.
creating venture-backed startups. And they had this whole moment in the show where they're trying to model out like how valuable their company would be. And at one point, the guy goes, "Why would you go after revenue? If you show people revenue, they'll ask you how much. It'll never be enough. You have no revenue, because if you say you're pre-revenue, then you're potentially pure play. You could be anything." And like it created this whole sort of hilarious that was done. It was definitely a narrative that like sort of existed in Silicon Valley for a while. And I think once in a while people remember that the purpose of building businesses is to create revenue, then profit and sustain it and grow it. And so anyway, that is a funny one. All right. On the signal to noise thing with crypto Twitter, like how do you recommend people navigate, sort of finding good sources of, reliable, interesting, sometimes contrarian, like what's the right way to think about building a follower list of crypto Twitter pundits or thinkers?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would say there's a few things to think about. One, diversify the people that you are following or subscribing to, right? So if it's only bulls that care about, I don't know, Ethereum or Solana, go follow some other people, follow some bearish people, follow some people that if you're only Ethereum people, follow some Solana people, follow some Bitcoin people, like try to get different takes. So that's the one thing. The other thing I would say is diversify the channels you learn from. Don't just learn from Twitter. Twitter is very fast paced. It's very like quick. It's not as well thought out in terms of the takes that people have, unless there's like very long form threads. There are some amazing threads. Don't get me wrong. I do love Twitter to learn, but like I prefer listen to podcasts, read newsletters, because these are more longer form, more detailed theses on whatever's happening. And so you can get kind of more comprehensive takes, right? Where a lot of times when you listen to a podcast, it's an hour long or 45 minutes. And they'll give both sides of the take, right? Whereas on Twitter, you're getting one little snippet of it. So I actually prefer that. And then use Twitter just to kind of help you find, oh, what podcasts am I missing out on? What newsletters am I missing out on? So Twitter's a good place for just like quick snippets, but I don't think it's where you should do all your learning. And then again, make sure you diversify. The other thing I would say is like every, I don't know, quarter, every 6 months, update who you follow. The problem is you can get stuck like following a certain amount of people, and then you just like kind of die with them. And so I always like every 3 months, I try to just go through Twitter and really dive through and like, okay, that's a great thread. Let me follow that new person. Let me follow that new person. So I'm always updating who I'm following. So you're getting kind of fresh takes, because a lot of times there are people who they have a theory about markets and they just stick to that and they stick with it for forever. And eventually it kind of fades into irrelevancy, right? So you want to update who you're following at all times. Doesn't mean you got to unfollow that person, but I think you just want to kind of stay relevant. And new people come into the space all the time with great takes. And so fresh ideas is really, really important. So don't get stuck in just like following the same old people, keep updating that is a key thing, I think.
Yeah, it's almost like building your portfolio to manage your risk and your wealth. You kind of need to have a risk adjusted and portfolio approach to how you learn about things. And so I think that's a great way to think about it, is to sort of diversify it, have different takes, follow different formats, whether that's short form, long form, podcasts, newsletters and more, just so you can take it in.
Yeah, and I would also add, get in the conversation, right? That's the beautiful thing about Twitter is it's not just a platform to listen. You can get in and ask questions. You can reply to these people, and a lot of them will still respond to you, right? You can have, or you can start having conversations with the people in the comments. This can be very, very useful. I know a lot of people kind of shy away from this, but if you want to learn, get in there and start replying to people. Ask questions. If you don't understand something, ask why. A lot of these people will actually just respond to you, and it can be very, very helpful for your learnings.
Well, obviously, it's heading into Q4 2026. We've seen some highs. We're seeing the market basically, sort of trade down a little bit the last couple of weeks. But, foundationally, nothing is really that different. We have fewer tariffs than we did at the beginning of the year from a macro perspective. How are you thinking about the current market dynamics? And, do you have any sort of closing thoughts or views for our listeners today, just to give them maybe a little perspective on the market?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually remain pretty bullish here. I know a lot of people are calling for a bear market, because it's the 4-year cycle, et cetera. I never really bought into that. I think that, like all assets, crypto moves not because of a halving cycle of Bitcoin, but because of the business cycle and the liquidity cycle. And all signs point to that continuing and growing over the next year, even more. A big reason for that, for people to understand, is because of AI. AI is really changing a lot in terms of our macro environment and how our world works. And I think the best thing to try to wrap your head around right now is the best companies in the world and the biggest countries in the world are all in an arms race to win AI. And so to win AI, what do you need to do? You need to spend a heck of a lot of money. And you also need to probably have rates really low so that you can win this, because they need a lot of CapEx to build data centers and build, new energy, and get GPUs and train these models and do all this stuff. And so the US and China have both committed to going all in on this. They can't stop. If they stop spending on this, then they're going to let the other country win. Same with your Googles and your OpenAI, et cetera. They need to keep spending and spending to win this AI race, because whoever has the best model is going to end up winning this. So there's a lot of money going into the space, which in my opinion is going to continue to push the economy forward. And this is kind of the goal of the administration right now too, is like, we want to win this AI race. We need to put more capital into it. We need to loosen regulations to allow all this to flourish. So that is your sort of backdrop for a bull market. And also for like a lower rates, potentially some sort of QE or some sort of monetary intervention. And so that means really good things for crypto. At the same time, what's coming is a market structure bill for crypto. And I think this is actually the most important thing that crypto needs, and why it's very hard for me to be bearish on crypto. To be clear, a lot of things in crypto I am very bearish on, a lot of tokens, because a lot of these projects and a lot of these tokens that we've created over the years are, as I mentioned earlier in the show, still kind of vaporware. They don't really bring their value back to their token. They're kind of uninvestable assets, in my opinion. The market structure bill is going to come in and say, hey, everyone that has a token, you have rules now. You need to, have disclaimers. You need to have disclosures. You need to report your earnings. You need to do all the things that like public companies do. And that is really going to create what I think is like a K-shaped performance in crypto assets. The good assets are going to really rise to the top. The bad assets are probably going to continue to go down. But I think that's an exciting time and an opportunistic time, because if you understand what's really happening in the space and what is the good stuff, I think you're going to do really well when this market structure bill comes, because that's going to unlock a lot of capital coming into the crypto space. A lot of institutions want to invest in crypto. They actually just still can't. And so when this market structure bill comes, I think it's going to unlock a ton of capital in the space, and we're going to go into a really, really exciting time. So I'm really pumped for that market structure bill, for this continued sort of bull market as a result of AI. And so I think there's a lot to look forward to in this space. I don't think we're going into a year-long bear market. That just doesn't make sense in the backdrop that we currently have. I think there's a lot of exciting things ahead. So I think now's the time to be doing your research, understanding where to put your capital, because you don't get this opportunity very often.
Cool. So people that want to interact with Milk Road, what should be the first stop? Where can they go to engage with the content, the podcast? Tell us a bit more about where they can get in touch.
So really depends on how you like to learn. If you want the kind of central location, just go to milkroad.com and you can see all of our different channels, and you can learn about the macro side, the AI side, the crypto side, and you can get the links to like YouTube and Spotify, etc. If you listen to podcasts, check us out on YouTube or Spotify. If you like to read, then you can sign up to our newsletters. If you prefer to be on Twitter, we've got, the Milk Road. It's just called @MilkRoad on Twitter, which is very, very active and shares a lot of information. And it'll also, we reshare a lot of the interesting people we care about that are sharing takes on crypto Twitter. So it's a good place to learn who to follow as well. So I do recommend you check that out. And then you can follow me as well, which is just my name, Kyle Reidhead. I'm pretty active on Twitter as well.
Kyle, well, thank you very much. We really appreciate you coming here and sharing your perspectives. Also talking to us a bit about the evolving media landscape, how to navigate it, and also your closing remarks as it relates to the market conditions today. So if you enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe and leave a review. And until next time, I'm Nick Carey on behalf of the entire blockchain.com team. Thank you for tuning in.